That's a short. I'm the Walmart. Welcome to City Hall. Welcome to council. Oh, welcome to City Hall.
Daniel's shaking everything.
So, good evening. I'm so sorry for the delay. We had a closed session and I'm very happy to announce that the council voted unanimously to appoint Joan Felipe to serve as the interim city manager effective December 5th. And that's of course subject to the approval of the employment agreement, which will be scheduled for December 5th. So she will start her employment after that date. And Joan, I would like to say a few words about her. Ms. Felipe most recently served as the interim city manager for Nevada City. And she was there for 6 months, but turned into 12 months. And then she was the interim city manager for the town of Loomis. She has a lot of experience. She retired from Clear Lake and she was worked very hard and accomplished a lot in each of these areas. She has an extensive background. She was also the interim general manager for the Forest Hill Public Utilities District, worked with the Colusa wastewater treatment plant. She was recruited by the city of Colfax to work there. And also she was the city manager for the city of Colusa, been around our area. So she's very knowledgeable and knows a lot about this area and will serve well as our interim city manager. So we're very excited to have her come on board and help with the transition with John, and we're excited that we're able to have this transition. She's excited to be able to have the experience and background of all the directors and our city manager to work with. So that was the report out of closed session. So I will now call a regular session to order. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yeah,
Yes.
Mayor, if I can just add,
Yes.
if this is still on, that the council will be returning to closed session at the end of the open session. If there's anything additional to report out, the council will do that after coming back.
Correct. Thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Yes, we will be returning to closed session. So we will conduct our general session now. Roll call.
Councilmember Spokely,
Here.
Berlant,
Here.
Dowden Calvillo,
Present.
Riddell Harris here, and Mayor Amara.
Present. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this is the time set aside for the council members and or the public to ask for removal, postponement, or a change to the listed sequence of an agenda item. The agenda will be approved by consensus of the council. Do I have anyone that would like any modifications to the agenda? Public? Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval of the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The consent calendar, all matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion with a roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless persons request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the motion to approve the consent calendar. Do I have any one from the council that would like to remove an item from the consent calendar?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would like to remove items 5 and 7, please.
Any others? Public?
I have an attendee on Zoom that just raised his hand. I'm assuming that's for a request to pull something from the consent calendar.
Okay,
Will, go ahead.
oh. Item 7,
Hi, it's Will Ketchum from North Star.
Awesome. So I'm gonna mute you for now, and then when we get to item 7, I can bring you back on.
Sure, that may have been a mistype. I'm just here if you need me for questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Will.
thank you. Oh, do I have a motion for the consent calendar?
I'll move that we approve the consent calendar without items 5 and 7.
I'll second.
Okay,
Councilmember Spokely.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Amara.
aye, thank you. Item 5, the sewer system management plan 5-year recertification to approve the 5-year sewer update systems management plan with California State Water Resources Control Board.
Yeah, so I'll just, and I spoke to John just very briefly about this, but on this particular plan, I recognize that we have to certify it. We have to get recertification every 5 years. But I also noticed that the State Regional Resources, Water Resources Control Board is actually in the process of adopting regulations that are going to require subsequent amendments to our plan. So then I had asked, well, why are we going to update our plan now versus just wait a month or two before those regulations are actually implemented? Because the regulations are subject to the APA, so there's public comment, and we all know what those regulations look like. So John had mentioned something to the effect that the changes were just the contacts and names, and because the changes were not like in a red line form, I don't know what they were. So I was just hoping you could give us just a brief synopsis of what the proposed changes are, and then knowing what those regulations are looking like, how significant are the changes coming down the pipeline?
Right, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Menjel Dean, Public Works Manager, and with me tonight, I have Dan Rich from Next Gen, who helps us with all of our sewer related engineering projects. So as the city manager mentioned, the changes in the current plan are just names identifying who the legally responsible people are for certain aspects of the plan. It was done in 2017, which I believe was the last time, and then some of the names and outlines have been out of date. So we've updated that to reach requirements. Some of the things that we know that are going to be changing over the next couple of months, as you mentioned, is going to.
Just really quickly. So the only changes really truly are for the contact information at this time.
Yes.
Okay, so then I appreciate that because we are going to save the bulk of the changes then once those regs come down the pipe.
That is correct.
Then go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, so the changes that we're expecting to come down the pipe are going to be how we deal with fog, which is fats, oils, and grease, our rags or debris and other things like that. There are some system evaluation capacity assures and capital improvement information that we're going to have to provide that we don't currently provide in this plan.
Mhm.
That's going to be required in the state. We don't know what that looks like yet. So when that comes, that's when we're going to make those changes. There may be some additional things that Dan can speak to.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Nice to see you again. As Mitchell said, the big emphasis in these programs have been really two things: assuring that you're dealing with fat soils and grease before it enters the collection system, because it's a known problem for creating clogs, that which then creates overflows. So the current regulations give agencies a lot of latitude about how they address fog programs. The proposed future ones are going to be a little more prescriptive and wanting them to get the fog out before it enters the collection system, as opposed to just cleaning it more frequently.
Okay, so they're going to be more prescriptive.
They're going to be more prescriptive is the rumor. These haven't been implemented yet, but
Mhm.
we've been through a couple of the workshops with the state and they've indicated that it's coming.
And so do you know where they are exactly in the process of those regulations or in the promulgating now? Do they have a target date for adoption?
They said it could be December 5th or December 6th as soon as that, but they had a bunch of comments from the last workshop.
They're
So
having to respond to those.
yeah, and this has been kind of it's a big deal. So I would suspect maybe in early 2023.
Okay, and so,
I'm sorry to interrupt. And that's primarily why we brought it to council now, because we weren't sure what that actual date was going to be, because they've been pushing it off. It was supposed to be earlier in the year, and now we've gotten all the way to this point. And with our document going out of date as of December, it probably made sense for us to bring this before council.
sure, and I understand that. We do have to have a document that's up to date. And so that makes sense. As long as the changes, I just was hoping that we weren't making a lot of concrete changes. And then with those regulations so soon,
Yeah,
we're gonna.
The
make
tentative
adjustments.
date they gave is in all likelihood, they'll give the city till about 2025 to comply with the new.
Okay,
some
but we'll
pieces
have to,
come out.
we'll have to amend our plan though to address that. So we have a little bit of time to, so in other words, once the regulations are in place, we shouldn't expect a revision to this plan right away.
Correct.
So we will have some time. Okay, good to know. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
And if I
Thank
could
you.
just add,
That's all that I had, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yes.
I just had one quick question. Since we were looking at the plan, I noticed that we don't have a lot around maintenance and CIP in there. And so is that something when we redo the plan that we'll make sure that we include? Because I know there's been a lot about making sure that we're doing enough maintenance on our sewer line system.
Absolutely. So the plan at this moment is we anticipate the changes are going to come within the next few months. We think we're going to revisit this with council by this time next year. So you'll see everything that's going to be included in that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the public? Okay, do I have a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I will move to approve the 5-year recertification of the updated sewer system management plan with the California State Water Resources Control Board as required by state law.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Spokely.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Amara.
Yes, that passes. Thank you. Item number 7, service agreement agreement with North Star Placer Marketing and Branding. Jonathan.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Jonathan Wright, Community and Economic Development Director, as well as liaison to the Economic Development Commission. EDC has set goals previous in the year to implement different programs, including the last one we just went through with the grants that we gave out and that structuring. Part of this and part of their initial budgeting is for a branding effort. That branding effort included an RFQ that we brought to council a couple months ago. They've gone through the whole selection process, even conducted interviews with 3 of the finalist groups, and they came out with North Star here. You'll actually recognize North Star. They're the ones that worked with Placer County. So Life at its Peak, which you can see all over the place. In fact, you can see beer glasses that have beer at its peak, and they did a really good job within the community. And so they were selected as the recommended finalist for this. And so this evening, we are trying to go forward with a public services agreement with them to initiate the first phase. Now, I want to be clear, this is one of 2 phases, but this is also a 2-year budget that we created. So the first phase fits within the initial budgeting that we put aside, or the EDC originally earmarked for this project. The second part is basically another $40,000 to complete the project. Now, in the packet, the total cost for phase 2 of this, they have it at $50,000. Now, we do still go into budgeting on this again. So when we get to the mid-year and the going into the next budget cycle, there'll be a chance to look at funding for it. If there's not funding available for it, we have the ability to go back and negotiate with North Star, who after doing the initial phase may have more information and be better at refining their numbers. And then also it included 2 steps in there. One of them was actually creating the brand development. The other one was the marketing and outreach, which the EDC has actually identified possibly another avenue going into that. So I don't want to get stuck on that second phase because that's something that we will work on here with North Star going forward. We also have Will Ketchum on the line here, who is the operating manager for North Star. So if you have any direct questions to what they're planning on doing that's outside of the scope of work in the document, then feel free to ask them. Otherwise, I think we have 2 members of the EDC here that maybe could speak to it, because again, I'm just a liaison and the mouthpiece. This
Thank you.
concludes my staff
Any
report.
questions?
Yeah, so I pulled this off consent, mostly just to make a statement, and I am supportive of this. I think that this is something that's very important for the city, and I want to be able to move forward, and I don't have any issues with the proposal. I just wanted to say that, right now Auburn is, our tagline is kind of this, Auburn, the endurance capital of the world. And I just don't want that to get lost in our branding. I think that, I just wanted to go on record for saying that, because I think that that has been very important. That is not the only thing that we're known for, but, I certainly see that as something that's very important, and I don't want that to get lost when we're talking about our rebranding. I'm very happy to see that North Star is the individual, or is the potential contractee on this. I think that the work they've done with Placer County has been great. So congratulations, Will, on that. I love that. And I like the other tagline. I think for one of the other cities, it said, do more, due east, for I think Santee. I like that, but I just don't want the endurance capital of the world to get lost in this. That's all. So for the record, that's really what I wanted to say.
Thank you for your input. Any other input?
I just wanted to, I was going to pull this too. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who put so much effort. Jonathan, you did a great job helping shepherd this through. The members of the Economic Development Commission. This was something that they've been working on for like a year and a half, trying to get it through the whole process and figure out how to make it work. This is normally something that staff would work on. And since there wasn't the staff to really put this through, they've basically kind of picked up the slack and really taken this on. And I think it's going to be great that we're going to be creating this that's not replacing endurance capital of the world, but putting some an umbrella that everyone can live under together, because endurance capital of the world doesn't necessarily reach everyone within the community. And so I just think this is going to be great. And I wanted to highlight that there are several, if you look at the scope, there are several steps along the way. We'll be reaching out to members of the community, Chamber of Commerce, businesses, trying to get input from everyone. So that way it's an all-inclusive thing. And the other thought is on the second phase of it having to do with funding. Part of the goal of this was to take all of the different funding sources and kind of put them together so they're not working against each other, but working towards the same goal. And there's been members of the community that are looking at possibly funding this as well and funding pieces of this so we can all do it together. So there might be businesses who pick up part of this, or different organizations. So I think this will be a great group effort.
Great. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. I think it's a new Auburn we're looking forward to. So appreciate that. And
Just don't
with
throw
that,
out
do
the-
we have a motion?
Just don't throw out the bathwater with the baby. So
We heard that loud and clear. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the service agreement with North Star Classroom Marketing.
I'll second.
is there?
Councilmember Spokely, Berlant,
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Amara.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Jonathan. And that brings us to public comment. This is the time provided so the public may speak to the council on any item not on the agenda. Please make your comments as brief as possible. The council cannot act on items not included on this agenda. However, the items will be automatically referred to staff. Council members also have an option to speak on any item not on the agenda at this time. And I wanted to say today, I went around, I'm very proud of our businesses in town. I went around with the sustainability group, or actually one other person in sustainability, and we went to the restaurants and provided them with sugarcane boxes that they can use for takeout. And the businesses were serving takeout with styrofoam, which I think I've enlightened everybody here, the dangers of styrofoam. And they were very receptive. The restaurants that we went, all were very receptive and excited to hear that there's alternatives and they're going to really work to make Auburn safe. And it was very exciting that we have such responsive businesses in town. So I wanted to just put that in there. And anyone else from the council? Yes.
Just really quick, the school district, Auburn Union School Board or School District is having a meeting on December 7th to talk about the consolidation of the schools. And so I just wanted, if anyone's interested in going, that is open to the public, if anyone would like to attend.
Thank
And
you. That's
just-
important.
Under public comment, we do have a pretty big parade coming up on Saturday with Festival of Lights. Oh, I'm sorry. I won't say. Were you
That'll-
going to get up and say something about it? Okay. Well, then I will defer to our illustrious executive CEO of the chamber to talk about that more.
Thank you.
But we have
There's a lot coming up.
Yeah, and
So
the
we'll
tree
be-
lighting ceremony was very nice. Shop local, our program on Saturday was great as well. So
Absolutely. It was so nice to see Menjel there with PCTPA. That was wonderful.
yes.
And everyone else, all council members were there. Thank you very much.
They had
Anyone
really good
else?
hot chocolate in a little container too that they were.
Oh, yeah, the hot.
Yeah, the
chocolate.
Knights of Columbus did that.
The Knights of Columbus served, gave out mandarins, actually. And sold hot chocolate. So with that being said, and anyone from the council, looks like we have a future councilman standing here
And we have-
before us
Miss Weston also wants.
and
Oh,
someone else. Go ahead.
yes.
And congratulations.
Mike Holmes, a resident of Auburn. First, I wanted to hope all of you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I I was happy to see the wastewater treatment plant on the agenda, and also something about SARS's. But my real question is the effluent that is coming out of the wastewater treatment plant, are we getting that tested for COVID?
That's interesting.
COVID? I didn't know COVID is transmittable through.
They do.
Well,
they do test
the reason I
it.
asked,
Okay.
there are a number of communities in our area that are having it tested and finding out whether there are COVID particles and so forth that are being discharged.
Okay. Well, then,
Placer County
that's-
Health. Placer County Health.
Placer County Health
Yeah.
does that. Thank you. Council. Future mayor here says Placer County Health will take care of that.
So we would have to pose that unless our city manager knows whether or not they're testing that, but the health.
Do you know,
departments
John?
Are
Yeah,
doing that.
whether it's COVID or not, all of our effluent that's discharged is tested for bacteria and the like. It's actually hit with a pretty good blast of chlorine and all that. So there's a whole litany of things. And if COVID can survive chlorine, we may have an issue. But I know that on the way out, it's getting hit pretty good.
I think that Mr. Holmes's concern is some of the counties are, one way they track COVID is by the testing of the wastewater.
Yes.
And so, but that would be something that Placer County would be doing, but it doesn't sound like they're testing the water specifically from Auburn's, or we would know that.
Yeah.
But Placer County, we could certainly ask them what they're doing to test, but
From what
I know who we could ask too.
Yeah.
From
There's
what
a supervisor there.
yeah.
From what I understand too, if you're testing to find out if COVID is in the water, you would test before it got treated because all the viruses would be knocked out by the cleaning process that goes on. You could also test the sludge.
Yeah.
That would tell you as
Yeah.
well, but the water gets all the viruses and all of the bacteria is removed through the clarification process. So it would be before it gets released. It's before it goes to the treatment process that you would test it if you wanted for research purposes to find out if it's present, but it wouldn't be present when it's.
Okay, so thank you very much. We'll defer
Well,
this to
yes,
staff.
if there's anybody at Meddlers in the morning, we can ask them.
Yeah,
If-
for sure.
They're gonna
Okay.
know. They're probably
Thank you.
testing.
They do know. They know everything. Okay,
They have
thank
their-
you
they
very
have
much.
Their chemistry set.
And then we have another important speaker coming forward.
That's gonna be me because I stole her thunder. So she's.
Yeah.
Jackie Weston, CEO of the Auburn Chamber of Commerce. I want to first of all thank everyone that came out to the Mandarin Festival as the official bar manager. It was a really great event, and it was really great to see all the city staff and council there. But secondly, yes, we do have a wonderful parade coming this weekend. Councilmember Berlant and I will be out there live broadcasting for all of those who don't want to deal with the cold weather that is going to strike. And I hope that you can all send some vibes to up above, and hopefully we will end the pitter patter that will be happening right before the parade starts like we did in 2019. But I came up here to tell you that the parade will run rain or shine. My cohort here, Kale, who's on the committee, we will run it no matter what, unless there's high gusting winds, which is not in the forecast. So bundle up, bring an easy up and an umbrella, and come join us for the Festival of Lights Parade this Saturday at 5:30.
Thank you very much. I think I'm judging, right?
Yeah.
So you told me.
I think we'll.
Okay, good. Okay, so thank you. And now we will go to council business. And Kale, thank you for your patience. That's why I've been trying to move this along. We're going to receive a presentation of the annual park impact mitigation fee report from the ARD. Thank you, Kale Muska.
Okay, Amy's gonna, hello. There we go. So I've got a little slideshow and presentation. There we go. Okay, so this is, most of this information's in your packet, but per the MOU, we're supposed to come every year, present. This is the first time we've been here in a few years, so we're gonna go back a few years, as you can see from your packet. So going back to 1819 Recreation Park, we did install security cameras, as you can see from around the park, which has been very helpful in a number of ways for some vandalism issues. And then also, frankly, tracking who uses James Field when they say we weren't out there, we didn't use the lights. So we say, oh, yeah, you did. It's right there. That's pretty helpful. One I'm sure you're all familiar with is the bike park. So the city actually contributed for phase 1 of the bike park, which was everything except for the jumps. And then we completed phase 2, which is that picture on the right, which was from this California Special Districts Association magazine, where we won an award for best project for a small district. So you can see we spent quite a bit of money on that project overall, $676,000. About 140,000 was raised through fundraisers and donations. And then the city and various other funding sources, county and ARD came through on that. In 1920, we did the James baseball field major renovation. Basically, we ripped it down to earth and started over again, which it really needed to do because it was getting pretty bad. The irrigation was not working well. Drainage was a problem. So we just tore it down and built it back up. And in the end, I didn't put this in there, but in the end, we ended up then having to rewire all the lights. When they renovated that field 50 years ago, they put those fancy new lights in, and they took those 480 cables and they dug a hole and they a trench and they threw them in and buried it. No conduit, nothing fancy like that. So we actually got put it
like that.
No. So we actually got to put into conduit, which was another $100,000 trick. Yeah. And LED lights, which is part of a thing that's coming up here. So 21, 22, and I think you're all aware of this, is the wheelchair swing that we got put in over at Recreation Park. And so with it, the bottom left-hand picture is the wheelchair swing. Plus, we actually had to install new swings with it because the wheelchair swing stuck too far into the existing swing. So we had to push everything over. But that's been a really popular swing. Honestly, I've yet to see a person in a wheelchair on it, but the kids love it nevertheless. I'm sure somebody's used it in a wheelchair. I just haven't seen it. Okay, so some proposed projects we have coming up. That is the front playground at Recreation Park. So the one, the very far north end, closest to Racetrack Street. And a couple of things about that playground. First of all, it's very old. So old, it's hard to get the parts for it anymore. And that's just a thing we run into with a lot of our playgrounds. Second, it's not really ADA compliant. The playground itself. Plus, there's no ADA path of travel to that playground. the best you can do is kind of get up the sidewalk and push a stroller or whatever you need to get across the grass to get to it. So we're going to put in a path of travel to get to said playground. And one I put on here, and I've been speaking with Mayor Amara about this, and it's kind of exciting. And I think you're all aware of this, but some possible, he says possible pickleball courts right or close by, yeah, right there. So we have a meeting coming up Thursday. I think it's this Thursday to look at that and talk with us, a contractor, and just see what we can do. We went out and measured it. We can get three courts in there with a little bit extra space for whatever we need. So kind of exciting. Our pickleball is our biggest program we have as far as adults. We don't have enough courts. We are looking at ways we've been looking at ways possibly to convert some more tennis courts to pickleball courts, which of course makes tennis players less than happy. So this would be a way to possibly get some new pickleball courts in that would be able to be done relatively easily and inexpensively because it's already flat-ish. So other projects of note that didn't use city mitigation funds, I just want to throw this in real quick. We did district-wide energy efficiency improvement projects. About $2.1 million projects throughout the district. That's regional park. We got that. We took out a loan and we did solar projects at Rec Park, Regional Park, Meta Vista, Canyon View Community Center and Placer Hills Park. We did a bunch of LED lights on the ball fields, LED lights around the district, like parking lot lights. We did efficiency for water, so like replumbed things. We did some more electrical work. So it was a big, long, drawn out project also, I should say. That's pretty much complete now. We got a few little plumbing things we have to address. But by the way, when you have an old district and they start digging into things, you just keep digging into problems. And other projects that I think most of you are aware of, Marriott Meadows, we did receive a almost $2.4 million grant to pay for the project, which is about $3.5 million to develop. So that's up at North Auburn. That's essentially that property is between the Deerage subdivision and the old Chan High School, which is now the adult school. And we were planning on going to bid on that soon. We're going to push everything out about a year. As with everything else, we run into some inflationary problems, and we're trying to work through some of those. And hopefully we did build in a 15% contingency when we first got quotes on that, and it's still not enough. So we're 15, 1, 5, yeah. I wish it was 50. I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. So, and just coming soon, if you're not aware, we do this really cool program we started over the pandemic. Something we did to get the kids out. We take 50 keys, we hide them around 3 different parks, 1 park per day, Rec Park, Meta Vista, Regional. 50 keys, and 1 key unlocks a treasure chest. As you can see that picture on the right. This is full of toys and gift cards and a bunch of cool stuff. Everybody that finds a key gets a toy, and the grand prize winner gets the whole kit and caboodle there. So that's pretty fun. We get lots of people coming out for it. Especially last year at the Meta Vista one there's a lot of people that came out. But anyways, it's really cool. And some really needy families actually have won it, which is really nice. I mean, like families like the first year, it was a family, they had just lost their dad recently. And then the kids last year, that one of them, they had lost their house in I forget which fire it was. Might have been the river fire. Yeah. So anyway, some pretty cool things. Pickleball, any questions?
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You don't seem to be having the vandalism problem we're having down here in our park. Is it because you have more lighting or people around or?
Well, we get vandalism. I mean, not as bad. I know you guys got hit pretty bad over there. I don't want to say anything because we might get hit, but we get a lot of tagging, but it's stuff we can clean up pretty quick. Like we get Overlook Park gets hit quite a bit, but our staff usually has it cleaned up by noon. If we're, they tag a lot inside the bathrooms, a lot, but we're pretty quick about it.
You are very quick. Yes.
But nothing, trying to think last time we had something really bad, like a big vandalism. Now we have had a couple of our trailers stolen. One at Rec Park, they got through a big pull gate with the hidden lock. They were able to cut that off, then cut off the lock on the trailer, and then one out at regional. Same thing. They didn't have to get through a gate, but they had to cut off the 2 locks to get that out. So we've lost 2 trailers.
Wow.
One of them was a very expensive trailer.
Oh, my goodness. Well, and then my last question is, when are you going to put a pool? No, I'm just joking.
Come on, Sandy.
I'm always-
I was
I'm
waiting on
always
that one.
giving him a bad time because there's not enough pool facilities for adult lap swim. So just hoping someday we can get there.
Maybe instead of the pickleball, you can have a.
No.
Yeah, maybe they would be all right.
No, but I appreciate the working the cooperation with you. Right away, you offered to help out with the pickleball idea, and what you're doing has been very good for our city. I really personally appreciate it. Now, does anybody in the council have any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Kale, for
Mhm.
the presentation. You know, I think our annual conversation about ARD revolves around the maintenance of the pocket parks that
Yeah.
that ARD maintains for the city. Anything new or any updates on Auburn Ravine Trail, just to be specific, or any of that stuff? Because that does seem to be a continuous issue. You are very, very responsive, and I really appreciate that. But I just know you and I both hate getting citizens' complaints to go
Yeah.
and cut down the weeds.
Yeah, I think the big one out there is if we had our way, we'd only have to go out there and do that annual maintenance on those weeds once. But it's just not possible because they get so tall and we have to go out and cut them, and they're still growing. So we get to go out and do it again. So
Well,
that's
Sandy,
our biggest
Mayor
problem.
kindly reminded me that we are going to talk about habitat restoration along the Auburn Ravine. And so maybe there's a way for that project to help address the overgrown vegetation that's in
That'd be great.
the city portion
Yeah.
of that trail. But I appreciate the staff's responsiveness to cleaning it up. Obviously, though, back to some of the vandalism, that's an area where trash does often get missed from the trash can that's at the end of each end of it. And so it's just a hard area to maintain, and just curious if you have thoughts of how we as a city and you as ARD can do a better job of kind of keeping up on a place that you're not routinely going to.
I think just more eyes on it. I don't get out there that often. I just don't walk that trail. I mean, we're talking 2 or 3 times a year tops is all I walk that. And I remember, was it last year or the year before, and we got a complaint from somebody saying, oh, there's a bunch of garbage out there. So we went out there and I myself, I walked the entire trail. I found 2 pieces. I found like a chip bag and a cup. It's like, well, okay. So now maybe they had cleaned it up, but someone had called our office and said, it's a mess out there. Okay. So I think just maybe more eyes on it, but when our staff gets out there, I imagine there are times where they just go right to the garbage can, empty and go if they're behind. So we just
And the problem
remind them they need to
garbage
walk.
cans are at each end of the trail, and that the garbage kind of happens in the middle. of
Yep.
it. So
And we same reminders. They just got to hit some of those areas like that.
yeah.
Sometimes it's easy to just skip it.
Well, and I think my one comment about the pickleball idea is the same concept as the Auburn Ravine Trail. The more we can get people out there using these locations, the less crime or graffiti or trash or just bad things that would occur there. And so I think it's a win-win for all of us. So appreciate those of you pushing for the pickleball idea here at School Park Preserve, and appreciate your thoughts on what we can do better at Auburn Ravine and the other little parks. The other little parks are so much easier because they're so tiny and they're nearby other businesses. But that Auburn Ravine Trail is kind of by itself right now. So
It's a little bit. So I was just going to add, Ashford Park is a good example of adding more activity out there. Some of you are all probably aware that Ashford Park had a reputation for a long time, and we got the dog park put out there, and the amount of people visiting that park went up exponentially, and the number of problems out there dropped with that, the extra visits out. So the extra eyes, extra people makes a difference.
all right, thanks, Kel. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much for your report. I really appreciate that. I will remind the council that many years ago, the relations between ARD and the city were not always as positive as they are now. And so I really do appreciate the fact that we do have a very good relationship with ARD. And I think that you've done an outstanding job with the park mitigation monies that we do funnel to ARD per our agreement. The projects, the ADA access swing there at the back park, or the, back park, I guess we call it. Just the bike park is not within the city's jurisdiction, of course, but just barely, but is just phenomenal. And just really appreciate the upgrades that you're doing to the ball field. Looking forward to your improvements at the front park. So just great things. Even with the pool, you've done such a great job there, and the little splash pool too, and upgrades there. So, but I wanted to say that I really am very grateful that there's been some changes at ARD over the decades, and leadership wise, and really appreciate all, the positive actions and the relationship that we have now. And again, I think you've done a great job utilizing those park mitigation monies. So thank you so very much.
Thanks. And I didn't introduce, this is Viana Galbraith, and she's our CFO essentially. So she's the one who keeps us in check if we want to spend money the wrong way. She cracks the whip, which is good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate all you do. I mean, we utilize your classes and pools, and my husband's going to coach a basketball team here in a week for the second grade girls.
Yeah.
Controlled chaos. It'll be fun.
Yes.
But I wanted to also say, I know you said you haven't seen any people with wheelchairs on the wheelchair swing, but I wanted to say how much I appreciate having that, because when my daughter had hip dysplasia and was in a hip brace like this, she didn't even fit in the ADA swing. So there really was no option for her. So even if it's not a wheelchair, sometimes there's things that just make it so it's easier for a kid to sit with their parent on a swing or things like that. So I appreciate taking that effort. As far as the front playground goes, part of the reason why we like it is because it's a little slower and a little smaller for the little kids. And we just went to the Meadow Vista new playground, which is awesome, but kind of tall and a little big. And it says right on the sign it's for big kids.
Yeah.
It would be nice if the front one could still be.
We'd probably still keep it 2 to 5. So generally playgrounds go 2 to 5 and then 5 to 12. So
Okay.
since the back one's 5-12, we would keep the front one 2-5.
Awesome.
And when we get to that, what we've done the last 3 playgrounds, well, 2.5 playgrounds, is we put it out for public vote.
Okay.
We tell the manufacturers, here's your budget, $100,000, design your best $100,000 playground. We put it out for the public to vote on, and the
Okay.
winner is the winner.
Okay.
That's what we put in.
And no treated wood, of course.
Was that?
No treated
No
wood.
treated wood. No, gosh,
Metal and
no.
plastic. though.
Yes,
Metal and
very good.
plastic. Oh, gosh, yes.
Well, Councilwoman Riddell Harris is our liaison, so she can vote. Any
I
other
always do.
questions? Anyone from the public? Up there? No? Okay. Yes. I'm sorry. Do you want to just come forward and state your name?
Kelly Davis.
Rec Park?
When I want to go inside.
Right. Okay.
I'll second that. When we're doing activities, we like a barbecue or something there's just not a place if we wanted to ride our electric bike over.
Got
It
it.
would be nice to have some bike racks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Excuse me, Kale, can you repeat what you just heard so that people at home can hear?
Oh, yeah. So basically what was asked is that there'd be a possibility to get more bike parks at the parks, the main
Bike
parks, like bike racks. What did I say? Bike parks?
parks, bike parks.
Bike racks at the parks, which is a
Great.
good idea.
Thank you. Kelly is a avid bike rider through town and with her children too. So thank you. And thank you for your input. Thank you. We really appreciate it, Kale. Thank you for your patience. Sorry, we were running a little late. Right. So we weren't really running late. Okay. You may not think so.
Oh, we came back. from-
Anyways, we came back pretty fast.
Yes.
Okay, so the next item is Habitat Restoration Project, SARCIS it's a grant for the maintenance agreement with the Save Auburn Ravine Salmon and Steelhead, and this involves the Auburn Ravine. Just what Councilman Berlant is interested in.
Mayor and Council, tonight staff's recommending the idea that we do a collaborative habitat restoration project with the Save Auburn Ravine Salmon and Steelhead organization, better known as SARCIS. One of the things I can tell you, my experience is that there's a lot of money out there for ecological and habitat restoration, especially streambed projects. And SARSIS has big goals. They want to see the advent of fish actually spawning into the city of Auburn. The first step is to have a healthy creek. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years that I've been working here is that we have some areas where we have a lot of invasive plants. Number one is blackberry. Blackberry is the equivalent of literally throwing a water pump into a creek. There are two portions of a creek. There's the overflow, which is the creek, and then there's the underflow, which is basically the water table that goes underneath it. Blackberries and invasive plants just literally suck that water out, and it's an amazing process. So about a year ago, Robert Hain, who is a very active member of SARSIS, he tells me, he goes, "You got to come out to my property." And I went out. He lives in an area north of the city of Auburn, off of Kemper Road. And he's got a Christmas tree farm there. But he also showed me what is an absolute model in stream bed alteration and a process. It literally is the perfect restoration project. It's one which prohibits things like erosion. He's got the best practices for everything in erosion control. They have removed any of the invasive species that are out there. They have replanted the area with native plants. They have included conifers. One of the things that an invasive plant does is it chokes out all of the native vegetation. Ultimately, that's what happens. The natives go in and they're called invasive because they invade. They completely take over. And in the case of looking at the projects that SARSIS has worked on out at Mr. Hain's property, I've always learned that the private property owners are the ones who have the best stuff. They have the best restoration when that is allowed to be done. So Mr. Hain and I, and also with Jack Sanchez, who a member of SARSIS, we sat down and we thought, let's come up with a project. The city takes in some mitigation funds for some trees that's just sitting there. And what better way to use those funds than to do some bona fide restoration? Just a couple of pictures. This is Auburn Ravine. I run by it 3 times a week. And this is what blackberries do. The blackberries have completely overtaken the area. They are killing those oak trees. They just kill them. That's what happens, is they get in there and they completely take them over. Our staff gets in there. If you look at the picture on the left, our staff is out there 3, 4, 5 times a year cutting the blackberry back. If you want to have a really hard day, go out and trim blackberry bushes. It's not a great way to go. A couple of weeks ago, Mr. Hain and Mr. Sanchez and we went out and they said, "Hey, we've been working on this project over off of Ophir Road." I said, "Let's go." Literally, I jumped in Mr. Sanchez's car and we go buzzing out there. And I always tell everybody, seeing is believing. So this is when we talk about restoration, we talk about a couple of things. Number one, you got to get the invasive plants out. And I will tell you, how do you get them out? You do them really 2 ways. Something mechanized, get a tractor out there to start pulling the stuff out. Around riparian areas, you got to be really careful with the tractor. But the second way you do it is you spray. And there are plenty of herbicides out there that are just fine around the riparian area. It's one of the key ways that you get in to really stop the spread of a lot of the plants. If you look at the picture on the right side, you can see where they've already started doing the blackberry eradication. The pictures of Auburn Ravine completely inundated with blackberry. This is where they've pulled some of the blackberry out. It's like a park there. And the best thing is all those native trees and everything absolutely are thriving. It's beautiful.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that Auburn Ravine?
No, this property right here, actually, I believe is city property. Yeah. Yeah,
Near
the North Ravine area. But they've gone in and I talked to them about it. I've done these projects over the years. So how'd you do this? And they basically went in and pulled the things out, basically doing two ways: mechanized equipment and some spraying. So when we talk about the idea of building an urban forest, this is an area that has been completely done and it's being maintained. You can see some of the conifers there. Once those conifers are planted, some of the best soil, some of the best ways for plants to grow are right in that riparian area, except when you've got the invasive plants in there. They're sucking all the water, but more importantly, they kill the native plants. And what does that do? It also chases away all the native plant or insects and all the native animals that will live along the creek. One of the most amazing things that they've talked about is what happened in Yellowstone. When they reintroduced various types of species into there. And they talked about the idea of introducing wolves back into Yellowstone and the way that the entire restoration, the ecological health of the area, you start off by getting the things that are invasive. In this project, if you look, you can see the conifers that they've planted out there. The area is very healthy, and even more importantly, it's very beautiful. Councilmember Blount mentioned the idea of some type of a trail. This is what happens. It's open, it's healthy, and doing things. They're looking at Mr. Hain put together a really nice letter. It's included in the packet. The idea of introducing some non-deciduous plants that'll go in, some trees, various types of redwoods, the incense cedars will go in. The thing that's nice about them is those trees are really good at choking out weeds, but they aren't going to kill the native plants, which is good. The idea of putting in dogwoods, and in the one picture I showed you, there were a number of dogwoods and the like that are coming up there. The areas that we're talking to them about is along Auburn Ravine, where I showed you. The first picture was right at Auburn Ravine and Marguerite Mine. And looking at Palm Avenue, just south of the Auburn Ravine. One of the things that Mr. Hain has said that he'll do, not only for our city staff, but also for the ARD staff. There's always controversy. You always have to watch out for the weed eater. And I think maybe somebody went in and took out a bunch of recently planted native plants a couple of years ago, just doing training, telling them what the good plants look like and what the ones you don't want out there. The confluence of North Ravine on Weiss Road out there. And they've also indicated they'll provide some of their expertise. Staff's recommending now there are funds that are allocated into this fiscal year and also into next fiscal year as far as the capital programs go. Looking at 25,000 out of the tree mitigation, because what they're going to do is they're not only going to eradicate all of the blackberry, but they're going to get in and replant trees, which is important. More so, I would bet just looking some of the oaks on Auburn Ravine Road there are pretty haggard, and you can just tell that the blackberries are just killing them. So the idea of plenty of trees going in there, there are huge benefits. The adjacent property owners, they're actually going to get more privacy. Once those trees start growing up, the dogwoods, the natives, all of those things will help provide additional privacy, but it'll also provide more usable land, because a lot of that land where the blackberries are is their private property to do. So 25,000 out of the tree mitigation fund, and then 15,000 out of the wastewater treatment facilities maintenance fund. Most of that area along Weiss Road, it's directly adjacent to and part of the wastewater treatment facility property. And the idea that they can continue to get in there and address some of the blackberry and some of those things are there. I'm bringing this to you just to basically get the green light from the council on this. And quite honestly, as I've talked with Mr. Hain about this, we can just do it on a maintenance contract with them. They've got contractors licensed to be able to go in and do this. We'll turn this over to our maintenance, our field maintenance section, and just have them go in. The idea is coming in with a plan and then allowing them to get out there and do the work. So with that, I'd
And
be
then
happy
maybe we
to-
can get ARD to help out.
They have
maybe.
some of their own.
Well,
So,
to do
yeah.
too, yeah.
thank
So
you.
anyway,
I wanted to introduce Jack Sanchez and Bob Haynes, they're right there. And would you like to step forward and just for a minute, just tell us, just as brief as you can be, how far up the salmon are?
I'm Jack Sanchez, president, founder of Sarsis. And the most crazy creative person that we have here is Robert Hain. And Robert Hain is in charge of this part of the getting the fish to Auburn. So let me introduce Robert Hain from Pine Valley Ranch. And he is the restoration coordinator for North Ravine and now for the confluence of North Ravine with.
And how close are the fish?
Okay, the fish, we had a celebratory year this year. We have all the fish all the way, all the flashboard dams, the fish are over. We have a counter, Friends of Auburn Ravine have a counter. We count the number of fish in the pictures, take videos of them. And we also got Hemp Hill Dam, which we've been trying to get out for at least 12 years. And it's gone now. And the only barrier now listen, the only barrier between the Sacramento River and the city of Auburn is the Gold Hill Dam. In NID speak, AR1, and they've already told us, don't worry about it. They're going to take it out. So,
Good.
Robert Hain.
Well, I'd just like to say again, my name is Robert Hain and I live in North Ravine and I've lived in Auburn since 1969.
Maybe speak a little bit louder.
You know, is this turned on?
There you go.
Okay, thank
There
you.
go.
And so anyway, one of the things that I would like to also mention, by being a 501c3 organization, we have the ability to work on private property. Okay, and we can take state or federal funds and put that to good use. And so one of the things I would really like to clarify is one of the things that I've done at my ranch. Okay, and I'd done all this before I met Mr. Sanchez. So I was working on blackberries for many, many years. And one of the things that I found out is that Himalayan blackberries not only drink copious amounts of water, but they eliminate photosynthesis. And so when you eliminate photosynthesis, once the trees that are living in these blackberries die, you have no other trees coming up. And so one of the things that a redwood tree does, it's non-deciduous, okay? So that means it shades all the time. And there is some pushback from some agencies about the number of trees that we've planted. But I would like to point out, when you have something new, you have to get everybody on board. And I did just have a meeting with a lot of people from NOAA and different things. Greg McKenzie we met with to try to get some of these packages changed. But again, it's a very difficult thing. So again, by removing the blackberries, planting a redwood tree, like at my house, what you don't have anymore is the blackberries don't exist. And it's, as you know, Mayor, you've walked those trails and looked at them yourself. And so it's a really a positive thing. You have cooler, oxygenated water, and that's what we need to have salmon up here. And as Jack says, we've got one more hurdle. With the Hemp Hill Dam being out, they're going to move up stream 6 river miles. The largest fish that was measured last year was 42¼ inches long. Now that's a big salmon. And if I'm not mistaken, we had 358 come through the gauging station. Okay, so there's a lot here. And I've talked about it before. If you know anything about Taylor Creek and the 10,000 people a week that go out there to see these little salmon that come up out of Lake Tahoe to go up there and spawn, is a big attraction. Or if you've ever been down to Nimbus Dam with your grandchildren and seen the salmon coming up. So it's a pretty big deal. But anyway, I would really love your consideration on this, because we can get a lot done and a lot cheaper. And so as far as using equipment on these jobs, I don't do that. We use hand crews only. And then I do come back in and spot spray. Okay. And the reason we like to do that is we remove all the vegetation and stuff that's needs to come out before we plant back in. So
Thank you.
yep.
And any questions from the council? Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. And John, I am very supportive. I've been out to your ranch as well, and I love all the work that you've done. I do have a question though, because you recommend planting coastal redwoods, but coastal redwoods aren't native to here. They're coastal and up in Oregon normally, and they do take a lot of water. So why wouldn't you use some kind of why wouldn't you find a native plant that is deciduous that you would plant instead of a redwood?
We do have other plants that we plant, just like in his report. So the cedar tree is one of the things, but the neat thing about a redwood tree, and when I say coastal redwoods, we have Aptos blue, which are also a coastal redwood. All right. And so there's just a difference in species. It's like there's probably 27 different kinds of Douglas fir. And so at my Christmas tree ranch, I planted 6 different types for disease. But redwood trees are bulletproof. And once they get shade on the ground, only thing that's going to grow there is grasses. You're not going to see any more blackberries whatsoever. And so the other thing, like the Oregon grape, we plant those back in because they produce a little like grape. And that's for the little birds to have something to eat from displacing the blackberries.
Okay.
So an invasive plant means it takes over everything. Okay, and I agree with what you're saying, and we've had many, many different discussions on this. And when you say non-native, how many in this room are native to this earth? Anybody? Hold your hand up and tell me how native
It's just
you
that
are.
they're more used to being in foggy, wet areas than they are used to
It's-
being here.
We
They
have
tend to like
done,
water.
I appreciate exactly what you're saying. We done a study with a young man. Huntsinger was his last name. He was in his 3rd year. I met him through Jack Sanchez, and he said, I'd like to do something for you. But after talking to him for just a little bit of time, I decided that he was a pay grade above what I was doing. So I asked him, could he do a test that would determine the consumption of water from Himalayan blackberry to a redwood tree? And it ended up being 6 to 9 times.
Okay.
And if you read that report, it's unbelievable. If you turn to page 3, which we have copies of on our website, he says, I could hardly fill the pedometer so fast that the Himalayan blackberry was drinking it. So this young man came to me and he said, Mr. Hain, I've got a leak. And I said, let's see the leak. So anyway, there was no leak. It was just consumption and evaporation because of the size of the leaf. So if you take a look at a redwood tree, what I've determined at my place, once a month, watering it deep. But if you plant that redwood tree back by a creek, it self-waters. And it's the same thing with the cedar tree. It is self-water. And all the other plants are self-waters, but you have to remove the blackberries first. So it's a process, but we have allowed this plant to be introduced to the state of California, which is all the way into Washington and all the way to Mexico.
And,
So
you know, I have a redwood in my yard and it's got so big, I had to cut it down.
Oh, no.
Sorry, but
Hey.
it was gonna fall on my house.
There was one at work that just was so big and it kind of overtook everything, which I don't have a problem with that. I was just, the reason why I was bringing it up is because we, as
know.
you know, drought, we look for native drought tolerant things that don't absorb a lot of water. So I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure if we're saying something that's not necessarily a native plant that we're going to be recommending, it's because it's takes less water than the blackberries. It's not necessarily.
it does take less
Yeah.
by volume. Redwood trees actually, and a lot of people don't realize that. If you go to the nursery, they say, oh, this tree needs lots of water, but it's not the fact. The fact is you water it once a month. You ever go past somebody's house and they got roots growing on their grass? You ask them, how long do you water your grass? Oh, 15 minutes every 2 days. Well, what do you think the trees are going to do? The roots come right to the surface, right? Because they're looking for water. But a redwood tree puts their roots down 13 feet and can spread 60 feet total diameter. And so they can find their own water. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Councilwoman Dowden Cavill.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to thank you so very much. I really appreciate partnerships like this one, where we can work collectively, we can work collaboratively together on making, Auburn Ravine a better place. I know that we're allocating some funds for this under tree mitigation. I think that's absolutely an appropriate funding source. So I'm good with all of that. I just want to make sure that when we're creating this wonderful area, that we keep the trees limbed and things of that nature, not just for potential fire, but also we don't want to make them attractive habitat for those that are without homes, because sometimes that will happen. I know that, the majority of Auburn Ravine is traversing through people's personal property. So of course they would, want to know what's happening if there's people squatting on their property. But I just, just to kind of put that out there, that when we're doing the plantings and so forth, that we aren't creating a habitat for those that are seeking shelter. And, we wouldn't want them to be camping there along the ravine. I know Lincoln has a problem with that, that the homeless are camping along their streams. It's a big problem for them. And, so it's just to be cognizant of that. And certainly we can be responsible, and we can, when we're doing the planting and just ensuring that we're limbing up and things of that nature, so that there is, so that you can see, and, for security purposes too. But I think this is wonderful, and I appreciate the work, and I appreciate the passion behind it. And so I'm very appreciative. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Berlant.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. John, a couple questions for you on the presentation. In this proposal, where are we, or where are you proposing doing work? Is it on the city-owned parcels, or is this money going to doing work on private property as well?
So the areas that we're going to go to, both is the answer. We have certain easements. The whole creek area along Auburn Ravine is both, obviously it's a drainage area that the city has maintenance responsibility and rights to. So on to there, if it goes on to the private properties, obviously they're going to need to, especially with some of the blackberries, to go and hit those. So it'll kind of be both. The one down off of Weiss Road, that's entirely city. It's kind of be a little bit of a balance. Obviously, you get the permission of the adjacent property owner on things. So both.
And just making sure we loop them in, especially when we're talking about spraying and things of that nature, when it's on private personal property, of course.
If I may, John, could you bring back up the letter that I wrote to you and go to, I think it was C.
Oh, let's see.
Well, Amy brings that up. The point of my question wasn't just about communication. It was more about making sure that we're spending city funds not to do maintenance on private and personal property. And maybe there's a difference because the property owners don't have a requirement to maintain that easement or that area. But I just think it's something for us to make sure we're considering. It's one thing if we're talking about on our land, it's another to be doing this work on other people's land.
No, the only places that we will do the work is within the sphere that impacts the city.
Okay, thank you.
Along our easement.
Yeah.
Planning area objectives, can we make that a little bigger? Okay,
But the bottom line is public and private property is the answer.
basically,
Okay.
99% of the work will be on city property. If you take, I should have brought a map, but a lot of time people don't like to look at maps. A lot of people don't even know that the city of Auburn owns property from Wise Road to the creek at the new bridge that's been built out there. It goes for about 1,000 feet, almost up to PG&E, is owned by the city of Auburn, but it's a miss. When we started this project, we took 15 10-yard loads of garbage off your property for you.
Wow.
Okay, 15. Okay, and that money was supplied to us by the county through mitigation for the Gold Hill. Okay, so it's just not like Sarsis doesn't work on my property. I built the property. I put $27,000 in just one project. Okay, and the reason is you can come to my project and say, this is functional. Tell me how it's not functional. So it's a good place, it's a teaching tool. But so what you're looking at up there under C, it says confluence of North Ravine, Wise Road up to the east boundary of parcel 10721, which is a privately owned property, but it's on the north side of Wise Road. So I use that as a reference point of how much land you actually own there. And so that's one of the biggest areas that we would like to clean up. And the reason we want to clean that area up the most is we are going to have salmon at that confluence. And eventually we want to build 2 bridges and a bike trail from the city of Auburn to get people to this area. Okay, that's what our proposed long-term proposal is. But there's a lot of logistical things that have to be done in the process. Getting the fish here, having the environment when they get here. And the other thing is, where are we going to park all these people? So we've talked about the fairgrounds, public shuttles to get people down to look at this, because this is going to be a big draw. It really is for the city of Auburn.
Yeah,
And so
I appreciate that. It's just, I think our job to ask the question of making sure that we're using residents' funds to do work that's on private property, just making sure that there's a greater good, which it sounds like is what's happening.
amen.
So thank you for
Amen.
that.
Thank you.
The next question though that I have, John, is I know that certain tree work and even landscape work is subject to prevailing wage. Is this work subject to California prevailing wage requirements?
No, yeah,
Doing it.
Can I tell you? No, it's not. And I'll tell you why. It's being done by a 501c3. We don't get paid.
I don't know if that matters.
But now, any contractor that we put on there, so far, and we've worked with Fish and Game.
we will make sure that we're
I'm not
that
questioning
it's
your
compliant.
work, But I
No,
just
no.
want to make sure that the California law doesn't require our funds to follow prevailing wage requirements.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
Eric-
I'll just jump in briefly on that. Yes, pruning is generally subject to prevailing wages. There are DIR opinions and also case law that found that to be the case. There are exceptions, including for volunteers and other things. So it's not necessarily they have to be applied, but there are exceptions that we'll need to look into for this case.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're doing it properly. Then I have 2 comments. One, I love this project. I think this is a great idea, making the stream healthier, making a place not just for salmon, but also to address Auburn Ravine for many don't realize, especially as it gets further south of us, is a major flood concern. And so making sure that we're doing our part to maintain it, though essentially potentially letting more water go through, but making sure that the ravine is in a healthy stage. But my second comment, I just have to echo what Councilwoman Downing Calvillo said. As the police chief knows, the city invested a lot of money into work that was done at the Auburn Ravine Trail between Palm Avenue and the West American Bank. And part of that project was to remove and limb up specifically so that his officers could see from either side, people not just living there, but also more importantly, doing nefarious things.
That's
And so we need to be able to make sure that our police officers have an easy way for them to enforce laws within that park, making it safe for people to use. So I'm all about making sure that we've got good shading, good trees, but I just want to make sure that we have a maintenance plan because the city has not, which is kind of my question to Kale, we've not done a very good job collectively maintaining that park. Again, a lot of money went into doing what should have been decades worth of maintenance work. But the fire risk that's there based on some of the nefarious things that do occur there beyond just camping. So just wanted to echo that we need to keep that in mind, but again, completely supportive of it. I think a few things we need to work out, but look forward to that. So
You know what, on that thought, I do think that this project will actually help the whole homeless situation because it's going to clear it up and make it desirable for people to walk by and utilize the whole area, which is,
I'm not worried about just homeless. I'm worried about transients.
Yeah.
That do
exactly.
other things, but no, your point's valid. And
Yeah.
Yeah, more people, more.
Councilman Spokely?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate it. I too love the project. I think it's a great concept. Just a couple of questions to follow up on what Councilman Berlant was talking about. The costs that have been presented to this council are $40,000. Have you received bids for the clearing work in the areas that are described in your letter?
No, I have not.
Okay, so
And the reason was, I wasn't too sure if we were going to get this and how much money we were going to receive. And one of the questions I did ask is, how was this going to be paid to us? Okay. So.
okay, thank you. I guess, John, my concern would be a couple of different, well, maybe three different things. We've identified areas and there seems to be a pretty ambitious list of creek sections that are identified here. One of my concerns is what was mentioned earlier about easements on these drainage courses. Obviously, we're a very old city. And my experience in dealing with old cities around Northern California is not always is there a drainage easement that accompanies a creek or a corridor. So legal rights to be able to go in and do clearing work is something that I would like to be determined prior to spending money to start any of these projects. That in and of itself could take a big chunk of this $40,000 to figure that out. Pulling PTRs, preliminary title reports and different things to see if there are easements in place. So that's one of my concerns. Daniel mentioned the prevailing wage. I share that concern. So I'd like that confirmed. Again, guys, I love the project. I think I haven't seen your creek, Bob, but it sounds beautiful and some of the pictures look great. So I think it's a worthy project. I think that blackberries are scourge. As a kid who grew up on a creek in my backyard, it was not a fun thing to have to clear those out every once in a while. The question that I have related to the clearing of the blackberries, if the section, I mean, how much maintenance, and maybe you have this on your property, how much maintenance is required to keep the advancing neighboring blackberries that weren't cleared from coming into your area? Is it the trees and the shade keep them from coming in?
They don't exist on my property. And the
So-
reason they don't is because the shade of the redwood trees that I planted 30 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to believe, but
So it's a full shaded canopy through your corridor.
it makes the water cooler, has
Gotcha.
more oxygen capabilities, because the cooler the water, the more oxygen, and that's what attracts anadromous fish. So when we get a big rain up here, but one of the things that you touched on really short period, you talked about stormwater leaving the city of Auburn, and that's something that we've been taking pH readings for 11, 12 years, and we see a steady improvement just by the $12 million that was spent on the wastewater treatment plant is absolutely wonderful because it's bacteria free. And I could tell you in 10 minutes what bacteria free water does to fish. It increases them because they don't have to fight. Their immune system doesn't have to fight, so they grow quicker. And I've actually seen that in use. But anyway, yeah, it's like I said, I think it's a wonderful project and it sounds like there's lots of things that we need to do. And if we're talking about getting $40,000 and you want to use 39,000 of that for checking to see if it's your property, I don't think we're going to get much work done for you. So I don't know, that was just put out by city council here. So,
Well, I guess my comment back to staff would be,
We'll look into it.
we love the project. Would love to have every penny of this money used for the clearing and for the tree planting. But if we don't have rights to be there, we could find ourselves in legal trouble.
The good news is we do know what property is owned by the city. And so that, and that seems to be like there's a big area there. So that would not be an issue. We wouldn't have to worry about that. So at least we could start on that and then.
See how far the funds go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the areas that we're going to go into are the areas that we're working in right now. They are areas that
Doing regular
prescriptively.
maintenance right now?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Yes,
that's-
those are, as we envision these projects, it was based on the idea of reducing our city maintenance effort in these areas, because like I said, we are in some of these areas as many as 4 or 5 times a year, because the blackberries just advance and advance. So we'll make sure that we have the legal right to do it and that we're covered in that. And also anything regarding any of the Department of Industrial Relations issues on prevailing wages, we'll make sure on that. And the city attorney squeezed me to make sure that if we're doing any stream bed alteration, that we're going to make sure on that.
Let's
So
not even talk about that.
yeah, so but no, we'll make sure that this is put together properly.
Well, you just answered my last question. Making sure environmentally we're cleared to do
Yeah.
plantings. It's one thing to clear, but it's another thing to actually do planting. So
Correct.
I'm sure we'll be looking into that as well.
Yep.
Again, guys, I think it's a great project. I appreciate you bringing it forward. Just a few questions, I guess.
Any questions from the public? I would just like to comment that I'm just totally impressed at what you've done so far. And what you've done to me is a testament of what we can look forward to. And very supportive, and this will help Auburn. Hopefully it will clear up that area, a lot of the areas, and people will utilize these walkways.
And there's one thing that I've had, right? Auburn is the tourist capital.
Wait, if you don't mind, do you mind talking into the mic? We like to hear what you have to say. No one at home can hear.
I was born in Ophir along the Auburn Ravine. I still own the house down there and I'm renting it right now. But what my dream has always been is Auburn is the endurance capital of the world. Right now, there are 185,000 cars that pass Auburn each day on Interstate 80. When we have salmon spawning in 2 parks in Auburn for up to 4 months a year, Auburn will be the only city on 3,000 miles of Interstate 80 from San Francisco to New York, in which people can drive 1 minute off Highway 80 and see salmon and steelhead spawning naturally in these 2 parks. That is a big deal.
Very true. And marketing can put that down. Okay, so thank you. So do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I will move that we authorize a grant and maintenance agreement with Save Auburn Ravine Salmon and Steelheads as proposed.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Spokely.
Yes.
Berliand.
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Amara.
Yes, thank you. That passes. And our next item is the downtown capital planning. And I need to recuse myself with regard to this matter because I have a conflict due to a property issue or property that I own. And so what I will do right now is I'll have Mayor Pro Tem Alice Dowden Calvillo take over. But before that, I want to take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
Amy, I don't need the presentation.
Oh, at all.
On your scalp.
Good job.
Right? No, thank you.
John, thank you, sir.
Sure. And at the last meeting, the city council received an overview of the capital planning work that we did regarding Old Town, and tonight bringing basically downtown back for consideration. In total, we had 4 different workshops that we did our best to advertise as far as out to property owners, to the businesses, the residents of the downtown area. Staff's bringing in a recommendation regarding that's very similar to what you saw with the Old Town. First is the idea of doing some preliminary engineering work that will go out and actually identify all the infrastructures that's out there. You can't do any type of capital work without having that done. In order for this, the city to consider any of the alternatives, you need to have that done. The second thing is that one of the options that came up was the idea of a gateway arch. This is something that has been looked at in the past. It came up as part of the overall workshop, but one of the things I haven't been able to do is actually get some of the, evidently there's some information out there that we still need to get. And that is something that I'm recommending, is that we get that information. And then the final 2 recommendations is the idea of doing a pretty comprehensive survey of sidewalks within this year's capital program. We have identified some money to fix some of the curbs, but as we looked at Old Town, as we looked at downtown, there's a lot of need to look into the sidewalks that are there. There are older properties that are in need of all of that. And then finally is the idea of bringing in cost estimates. When you went through the entire process with everybody, they really broke it down into a couple of key things. First is the idea of maintaining the pedestrian amenities. One of the things that we're working on is the elimination of some of the temporary outdoor dining, and we're working with the property owners on that right now. But the idea of maintaining some levels of the pedestrian amenities, people absolutely love that. The second thing is the idea of trying to create spaces and places for people to go in and actually to spend time. It's not just about outdoor dining. It's about the idea of creating really great spaces. The Upper Lincoln Way area is just classic for that. There are some potentials for mid-block crossings, the idea of adding in some seating just for outdoor and hanging out in downtown is absolutely right there. There are multiple locations. When we did our walkthrough, there were basically 3 really great locations for doing any of those things. The preliminary engineering work will help to determine maybe some of the best uses for that. We talk about the gateway arch that potentially could come in. Questions: where would that go as far as creating that gateway? Would it just be on High Street? How close to Elm would it be? How far would it be up going on Highway 49? Would it be coming back down closer to the downtown area? All really good questions, all things that need to be answered. One of the final things that we really looked into the consideration of is what's the most doable of the projects. As we looked at various things, quite honestly, the idea of a gateway arch, very doable, very doable. With $500,000, you absolutely are going to be able to get something done. And if you had to find a little bit more money, it probably wouldn't be that much more. One of the things I saw, and I know that April's going to talk to some of the issues that the Downtown Association has about the idea of doing more traffic analysis. You could absolutely include that in the recommendation. If the Downtown Business Association is trying to get more data in the information that they want to do, the idea of doing more traffic analysis would be there. The We already have a significant amount of data from the Upper Lincoln Way stretch. As we looked at the one way, they've recommended getting some numbers based on High Street and going all the way to Lincoln Way by City Hall here. So those are all things that are completely open and ready to go. With that, staff has the recommendation, basically the preliminary engineering, getting more information regarding the archway, doing some survey of some of the repairs and infrastructure and the sidewalks especially, and then finally bringing all that back to the council. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Council members, are there any questions for staff before we open this up to public comment? Any questions? Yes.
John, I'm a little confused. In your presentation, there's several things that refer to one way, but when I had talked to you a couple weeks back, you said the one way issue was dead and we aren't talking about it anymore. So I'm really confused on the one way.
We are not talking about one way. I grabbed the wrong presentation.
Okay, that's what it
Sorry.
was. Okay, so this is not in any way talking about making.
Not at all.
way
Not
and
one
street
bit.
One way. Okay.
We're
just wanted to
forbade
clarify
from
that.
talking about it.
Councilman Spokely?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. John, in going through the staff report, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the workshop, so I read through it. I see the sections that you're looking to I guess, survey, come up with a plan for improvements. I saw the allocation between infrastructure and placemaking percentage wise for the $500,000 ARPA monies. We have a streetscape plan.
Correct.
Was there conversation at the workshop about trying to select the next segment or a couple of segments of that existing plan that the city adopted many, many years back?
Yep. So phase 3 is straight out of the streetscape master plan. It's the phases of the plan kind of go a little herky jerky on various things, but phase 3 is that section from Cleveland going to Elm Street. And the consensus was to focus on that section. And so it was that section and Upper Lincoln Way, which is not included in any of the streetscape plans. The good news about anything that you want to do, well, not anything, but most of the things that you may want to do in phase 3, there's already an environmental document that's been done on that. It's already gone through Caltrans. It's already gone through most of the elements for it. So phase 3 of the streetscape plan.
But the Upper Lincoln Way, for example, where in your presentation does it talks about the challenges and pros and cons? I guess I'm just grappling with what are we going to build in the Upper Lincoln Way stretch?
So there are essentially 3 areas. If you're going to do some pedestrian areas or do some streetscape design, there are no streetscape designs for Upper Lincoln Way,
right,
at all. There are 3 really good locations that if we really wanted to look at things for enhancing some pedestrian area at the mid-block crossing that already exists there down by the bank. But also one of the suggestions is right up near Cherry Street. There is a great open area that if you were looking to create kind of a gateway entrance into that section, you absolutely could do it. So the idea is we do some of the preliminary engineering and you get a look at what each one of these areas could do and what types of projects you could actually do. On Upper Lincoln Way, the idea of adding some type of a shade or trees or something like that into it, for the pedestrian area, absolutely is doable.
I guess maybe that's where I'm getting hung up, because we're talking about using these monies to do this preliminary engineering work and cost estimating work, but really a big chunk of this money is going to be used for planning and concept planning, I would think, right?
Now, if the planning's already been done for this down on High Street.
Right. Yes.
So
Part of the streetscape project.
yeah, not a whole lot of planning that needs to go in there. If we're to look at Upper Lincoln Way, yes, there would need to
Some
be
planning
some
component of that.
streetscape planning that would have to go on there. Because it doesn't exist. The probably the biggest aversion to doing some type of additional streetscape work down on High Street is based on the utilities that are out there. There's no way to underground those utilities with the money that we have. There are also storm drain issues. One of the kind of the mantra was, let's not do something that eventually is just going to get torn out when we have to do some of those. That's why the whole archway concept is pretty easy, because basically if the archway is not something that can't not be overcome if you had to do additional work out there.
So one more question and then comments, or do you want to hold off on?
I want to hold off on comments if
Okay.
I can. So we can.
So one more question. The archway is a good example because we actually have a little sketch of what that will look like.
Yep.
Will, like the last item we had on the agenda, will the ARPA funds be mandate prevailing wage be?
Oh yeah.
Paid?
No, the kind of the archway sign, you're going to buy a sign. There are companies that build those and install them. So invariably, yes, it would be a prevailing wage project. But in so many ways, we'd probably come up with some type of a design and go out to some type of a sign company that would be the one who puts it in.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilman Berland?
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. A couple questions that I think piggyback on what Councilmember Spokley said, and I still kind of got lost in it. So the phase 3 portion of the streetscape, the High Street portion, from Lincoln Way all the way to Elm, that's not part of the recommendations though, correct?
No. So phase 3 is from Cleveland Street to Elm Street
On High.
on High Street.
I know I get the highs in Lincoln, but here's,
Yeah.
but in the staff report, the 3 areas that you're proposing to do various preliminary engineering on, it says Upper Lincoln Way is the first bullet.
Yep.
The Gateway Archway is the second bullet.
Yep.
And then sidewalk improvements. Staff report says Old Town, but I assume it's a typo for downtown. So I guess where I'm lost is where would the phase 3 capital improvements be in those 3 areas?
Okay. So for the phase 3 area, we aren't looking to do anything there. The streetscape plan already has plans for phase 3 if you wanted to go there, but just the realization, the reason why staff isn't bringing that to you, it's just cost prohibitive. The $500,000 wouldn't even touch the iceberg on that thing.
John, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Here's where I get lost though. Because I hear what you're saying completely that.
Yep.
But then why are we doing preliminary engineering on Upper Lincoln Way section if that was not part of the streetscape, CEQA and engineering guide? So wouldn't we be paying more money to do that area because it was never part of the initial plan?
No, you're talking about literally just a very long block of area. The ability to get through as far as doing streetscape improvements and all those. Ultimately, are you going to have to do environmental review? Yeah, you are. But the idea of going in and enhancing the streetscape is not going to be a huge deal from a CEQA standpoint. It won't. If anything, the idea of adding in the pedestrian areas, in so many ways, improving the street and roadway, that would not be a big issue.
So I realize that the action tonight would only be to get preliminary engineering on identified infrastructure on Upper Lincoln Way.
Yep.
However, before we could actually do work, we would need to pay and take the time to do CEQA.
Correct.
Okay. Then my next question on that Gateway Archway, I heard you say that the specific location isn't necessarily as important, but don't you have to know exactly where you want to put it in order to do the engineering designs?
Yeah. So not proposing that right now. What there has been work done on this. And what I'm saying is we need to find out, we need to get somewhere out there is information regarding additional work in the staff report. There's a picture of a gateway arch that was done by Michael Murphy a number of years ago. But my understanding, and I haven't been able to find it, is that there is additional information out there that was done by the Downtown Business Association or a group that was looking to do archway projects. And we just don't have that. Let's get that information and bring it back and look at the options for where you may or may not want it to go.
Okay, that makes sense. And hopefully somebody shared with you, because I know we saw it in like 2016, and I thought it was sent to the planning commission. So I don't know if any of our former planning commissioners during that time remember that, but I would think that it would have to have been part of the record. And I remember the piece of it in April I realized that that Miramar, who was on the planning commission at the time, may not remember, and not to put you on the spot, but I thought that was kind of where the project kind of died, was that just was cost prohibitive to do some of the structural engineering components of it. But my only point is, they should be somewhere that you should be able to track down. But here's my comment on the gateway. But I guess you wanted to hold comments later.
Yeah, I want to just allow the public an opportunity to speak before we start making comments. So I know that Councilwoman Riddell Harris had another question as well.
Sorry, just really quick. Two things. One thing that came up in one of the meetings that we had was the outdoor dining. That issue has been addressed and it's going to be ending, and they're going to be taking out the outdoor dining, right? I just wanted to make that a public comment, that comment public, so everyone was clear that was true.
Yep.
And then traffic analysis that was brought up. Is this part of the circulation element, or is this not included? Because wouldn't we be getting some traffic analysis when we do the circulation element that we're in the process of doing?
Not as specific.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like you do every street.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify, because I know that you've been talking a lot about how traffic is going to be done through the circulation element, but this would be something more detailed than we would get through the circulation.
Correct.
Okay. That
Correct.
was a little clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. So I appreciate the questions that have been asked by my colleagues. I had some of the same questions that Councilman Berlant had asked. So to be very clear, we're not considering streetscape plan phase 3 here. We're looking at something completely different, which is encompassing Lincoln Way versus High Street, which is where the streetscape plan was established. You're saying that we really can't move forward with streetscape 3 because it's cost prohibitive. It's going to be more than $500,000 to just, for example, underground the utilities. And then we have some storm drain issues there as well. So is there any aspect of the phase 3 that could be done that I don't know. I wasn't on the council at the time, but
So anything that you wanted to do in phase 3 would be very expensive. If in the perfect world, it would be awesome to have the money to do the streetscape plan. The streetscape plan is a very good plan. It's solid all the way through. This $500,000 just isn't even a drop in the bucket.
is there a way that we could leverage? I mean, the reason I bring this up is because the streetscape plan was something that was fully vetted. It was fully supported. I mean, and the CEQA is done. Is there any way to leverage some of those funds for that? I mean, PG&E is, we know where they are financially, but I just wonder if there's any way to address that, or if we could leverage our monies there, or.
So we have to get.
Otherwise the reality is with redevelopment dollars gone, I don't know when we will ever have any opportunity to do anything there. And we do have some money, and I just don't know if we have the opportunity to leverage that for something.
Yeah. So we have to basically get this money out the door by 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So the ability for us to work on trying to leverage it. I would love to leverage it. But in the case of doing any of the streetscape work, you would really have to leverage it, because you're talking about the segments of those being in the millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. And do we know what the costs are for undergrounding the utilities there? Do we know what those costs are?
you know what, I know of a project that literally just opened up, which was just basically it was an alleyway that they just opened up, and it came out to about $1.2 million for dropping it down into an alley.
I
It's,
also don't know if PG&E could get it done by 2024.
Yeah, I know. I understand. I just see that, you know, the fact that we have this plan, we have the CEQA documents, you know, it's a great one. I recognize that it's incredibly expensive, but, you know, we do have a little bit of money. I also appreciate that, you know, I don't want to, I did say we were going to refer or wait on our comments, but, all right. So that was really just the only question that I had at this point in time. So with that, I'd like to open this up for, or yes.
Vice Mayor, if I could just ask a follow-up question though on what you said. In the discussion though of leveraging, and again, I realize we're kind of going now to this phase 3 discussion versus the recommendations, but have you had a chance to at least look into the CPUC Rule 20 fund, which is where the utilities are pulling their undergrounding money from that we all pay into? I'm under the impression that they prioritize their undergrounding for high fire threat areas, not necessarily for urban cores and beautification and things that we're trying to do. But I'm just curious if there is dollars that would be available. And the number that in my day job that PG&E always uses is 2.5 million per mile. But again, a lot of that money is coming from us, the taxpayers, in the Rule 20 program.
yeah, you know what, our city engineer, Alan Mitchell's online right now. Maybe just a quickie question for him, if he knows what the balance in our Rule 20A is for undergrounding, because when they did Central Square, I know the city basically begged, borrowed, and stole as much Rule 20A money. They didn't have hardly anything, but I don't know if
this is Alan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Alan.
I quite frankly don't have any idea what the balance is on Rule 20A, but John's correct that it's a very expensive, long and arduous process. And in winters, the alley he's talking about, we were at it for probably over 5 years, maybe 10 years. And, you know, PG&E is one thing, but, you know, Wave and the data and AT&T, they're all companies that are just difficult to work with anymore. So anytime you're dealing with overhead utilities that you want to underground it makes a long process. And I believe PG&E recently sent out notification that they were going to get away from the Rule 20A process. So I don't know if that's grandfathered if you have existing funds, but there might be something that's not even eligible anymore.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, I'm going to open this up for public comment. I do have a lot of comments that I want to make as well, but is there a public comment?
Good evening, April Maynard. I submitted public comment from the Downtown Business Association Board of Directors. And I believe everybody received that, and I could read it or review it, but I think you've all seen it. So just to summarize, you know, we had a unsatisfactory experience with our efforts to discuss one way on Lincoln Way, and it brought out a lot of the community and the neighbors. And what I took from that and what continued during the process through this workshop is seeing a lot of people who are interested and genuinely interested and sincerely interested, having opinions that were just kind of opinions, kind of thoughts. And there was no information provided for any of the propositions that were put up for questions or polling or voting. And so what the board of directors of the Downtown Business Association came to is that the only way to bring together such a disparate group of individuals, and we're talking about the neighbors, but also within the business district, on our board, we have retail people and we have restaurant people, and they don't agree about parking and outdoor dining space. I mean, so let alone the entire district. And then you throw in the neighbors that are very concerned about their quiet neighborhoods getting overrun by traffic, whether that would be sustained if there was actually a change in the circulation would remain to be seen. But there are fears that come up when there's change proposed. And I mean, when we talked about the one way, there were many stories about, oh, we already suggested this. We suggested going the other direction. We suggested doing this and that. What I've never been able to see is that there has been a professional overview of what we're trying to accomplish. And I'm speaking now for the Downtown Business Association. Our job is to enhance the business district, both physically and to support the businesses and increase the economic atmosphere and success of the businesses in the district. And I mean, so that's why we listed those things. And obviously those, to educate people when they're passing through Auburn, that they even know they're in Auburn when they go down 80. I mean, that isn't necessarily an infrastructure issue, but it is a rational interest to try and do. And it's what we've been talking about for years and years and years. And to know how to get to downtown. We don't have good signs on the freeway or within town. And I mean, we have all these random ideas. Let's get a billboard for $2,500 a month and advertise. I mean, it's so random, and nothing happens. And this is an opportunity, in my opinion, and the opinion of the remainder of the DBA board that voted for this suggestion, was we have an opportunity, whether it's 20,000 or 40, I don't know how much it would be. This isn't my area of expertise or of anyone on our board, but say even we have 400,000 to spend after the different assessments are done in the utilities and all that, to have a professional opinion about the circulation issues within Auburn's weird. Auburn has, downtown's up and there's Cow Pass and where's Lincoln Way, and nobody can figure out when they come into town. They go into Old Town, they think they're in downtown because they're down. And we have to have a coherent message, and that's part of the marketing and the branding that's coming out of the EDC. And I think we can join together in that and have a professional, coherent delivery of Auburn, what we are and what the business districts are, how to get to the business districts, and then to find a lovely place when they get there. And I don't know how much all those things cost. We don't know how much all those, but I think there are people who have the skills and education and training that they could help provide some professional opinions about what could be done to optimize what we have. We have the best location on Highway 80 between the Bay Area and the mountains, and we are so not taking advantage of that. I remember probably 5 years ago, so a young man who works at a gas station down, near In-N-Out. And he said all day long, they have people come and stop in and get gas and ask where they are, a block away from 80. So there's much that can be done, and we have this money, and I hate to see it spent on more random ideas that 5 people here and 20 people there and 8 people at this meeting think is a good idea just because it was said. There's no basis for it. There's no data for it. There's no educated input about it. And I think this is the opportunity where we can invest in rational planning. And I'm not talking about a circulation plan that goes in the general plan. I'm just talking about someone who has the skills to look at the entrances to Auburn and the business districts we have, and perhaps even connecting the business districts, and just take this opportunity to do something really smart. That's what I think we should do. So you've read that, you know what our recommendation is in its specifics. But I need to take off this hat and renew my time, if I may, because I have some experience with the Arch from 2016, and I provided the city manager, and I believe I copied Alice because she was the rep to downtown during this process. On November 7th, I provided the staff report from 2016, where DBA came to council to propose the Arch. It was sent to EDC and it was sent to the Arts Commission. I provided the drawings of the arches, the invoices for the arches and the recommendations the Arts Commission made against the arches because they were, well, I mean, I can give you the report, but that was 2016. And I also explained to Mr. Donlevy and to Councilmember Dowden Calvillo that the proposal died, and I was privy to discussions during that time because the DBA allocated $20,000 for the arch. Said we will pay for everything. The city doesn't have. I watched the video. I went back and watched the video in the archive, and they said the city doesn't have to pay for anything. And there was then much discussion from staff that I was privy to that $20,000 might buy a cheap arch, but it wouldn't get it in the ground. And it would be like $100,000 to get, they learned from the poles that hold up the banners in Central Square that you have to go so deep and so substantial to hold up something like that. It's extremely expensive. I could never find anywhere in the archives where it ever came back to council. I don't know what the discussion is about where this information is about the arch that couldn't be found because I provided I provided council records. So I don't know what information is being searched for. So in terms of the streetscape plan for High Street, I remember when we were out there talking, and I think probably in another workshop meeting, that it would be so easy to put in angled parking and traffic calming. And so I don't know why like paint on the asphalt wouldn't be, and again, I'm not speaking for the board, I'm speaking for myself, because I mean, just being a resident of Auburn, that stretch of High Street is the worst blighted stretch of downtown, and it is a terrible entrance. And there's been suggestions there could be bump outs. I don't know anything about the utilities underneath or undergrounding. I don't know why the bump outs that are being described for other places couldn't be part of the angled parking on High Street that would provide a slower, calmer. And if you had bump outs, put shrubs, don't put trees. I don't know. But I mean, I think there's some way to make that stretch of High Street more attractive and not feel like a mistake if you're coming out of the canyon and you turn down High Street and you think you're in the wrong place because it's awful. So I think I have, let's see, talked about that. Oh, and just, I think I'll leave it at that. I think that's enough. I've overstayed my time.
Just for clarification purposes, in 2016, I was on the planning commission, so I wasn't the liaison to DBA. So maybe.
No, I meant during the ARPA planning.
Oh, okay.
You were that, so that's why I copied you
Yeah,
on.
okay, great. I just want to make sure because it
Yeah.
sounded like I was doing something in 2016.
No,
and
no,
I
no,
was
no.
on
No,
I can't even remember if I was on planning commission.
No,
But
just
I probably was, Matt. If you were on the council, I was on planning commission. Yes. So in any event, so okay, thank you. Thank you, April.
Okay.
Is there any other public comment on this item? Somebody's hiding. All right. Okay, I'm going to take this back to the council. I guess it's not really a question, but on this issue, you know, John, I really appreciate the outreach you did. You know, the city council did task you with that. Initially, your thoughts were to implement the streetscape. I know just initially we talked about this a year ago when we talked about the ARPA money. And we on the council felt that it was important to involve the community in this decision-making process. And so that is what you did. And we had some meetings, we did some surveys. And I know that initial meeting that we had at City Hall in room 10 was packed. I mean, it was hard to even get in. I was not able to attend the last meeting where the decisions were made. I was out of town, so I don't know how well attended that meeting was. I did do the walkabout. I think you and I were both on that. And there were just a few folks on the walk along. There wasn't a lot of people really. And that's really where the arch came back up. You know, I remember hearing women, I don't remember who it was because it was dark and I was in the back, but I remember women's voices talking about the arch. So I do appreciate that. You did what we asked you to do. Part of the concern that I have is that I hear what the Downtown Business Association is saying. And to me, I think it's important to solicit, I know where the board stands. April has conveyed that to us. But I don't know where all the businesses are, the property owners are, all the members of DBA. And I would be interested in hearing their thoughts about this. Again, you can only lead a horse to drink. You can't, make them. But I do think it's important to hear from them. I also recognize the fact that they all have different opinions on what can happen in downtown, whether or not it's more parking or this or what have you. So I see that there is some value in carving out money to develop a strategic economic development plan for just that area. We were talking about doing branding for the city. And so I would not want that to compete. I'd want that to complement. And so there might even be an opportunity to augment that contract. I don't know. But to actually have a plan, because what's happening is somebody's saying the arch is going to draw people in. Someone else says, well, more parking is going to draw people in. Another business owner says, well, no, the electronic billboard is going to draw people in. Well, we don't know that for sure. I'm not an expert. They are probably not an expert either. Really, an expert is a consultant that does this for a living. I know that the concept of the arch came after something that was done on Fulton Avenue. Well, I've been on Fulton. I'm sure you've been there too. And the arch is lovely. And I love the Fs and all the work, but guess what? That area is still blighted. All those new car dealerships are all used car dealership. And that arch was, you just have there's used car dealers now. And so I do not see how that now that was all spent. They did that work with the BID monies, and they have a very strong district there. And so that's how they paid for that arch and those improvements. There was some grants that came from the city too, but it was also BID. So it was a combination. But really, now you could tell me that an arch somewhere else did great. Is it going to do great in Auburn? Well, I guess it's about positioning, and we don't know where the position is. And the reality is, if you're trying to capture people and let them know where it is, it probably makes the most sense where it doesn't make the most sense, because that's on, Elm and High, where we're welcoming people to our area that is not as beautiful and lively as the other areas, but that's how you attract them. If we put the arch where it would really serve, look nice, like by Cherry, we're not meeting that intent, which is to bring people in, because they've got to already be over there in order to see the beautification. So then the arch serves more as a beautification versus a sign. And so I think that there is value. And again, John, I appreciate the work that you've done, and you did exactly what we told you to do. But I think that there is value. And if the DBA as a body, not just the board of directors, would sign on this, I think there is value in having a strategic plan. We can't spend a lot of time, because whatever we do has to be implemented quickly. But to have some experts come in and advise us on, because there's a multi-prong approach. It's not just about the sign. It's not just about this. I had a conversation with April. People that are on I-80 are usually going point A to point B. And if they're going to stop in Auburn, they're in and out, Starbucks, they're hungry, they got to go to the bathroom. If you want to bring people here, you need to catch them before they plan their trip. There will be the random person that's coming off the freeway and then they're hungry and, oh gosh, look at these great shops and, so forth. But most people are coming to Auburn for an intent. They want to enjoy we have a wonderful town, our arts, our culture, our endurance. There's so many things, but we talk about trying to get that traffic off of 80. Well, again, I don't have all the answers there too, but it's not just signage, because you've got to get people interested before they make their plans for that trip. You want them to make Auburn that destination, so that when they are going up to ski, you know what, we are going to stop in Auburn and we're going to eat here. We're going to get our car charged here and we're going to shop, and maybe we'll stay overnight, because there's so many great things to do here. So, and I think that we could get that from doing some kind of an economic strategic plan. I know that Jonathan is could advise us. There are small economic development plan, concentrated economic development plans. I don't know what the technical term is, but when they're just looking at an area. And I think that we really could benefit from that if we could fast track it. And if we were able to maybe tack it on with the North Fork, I mean, that would be wonderful. But what I would want is I would want to have the DBA membership. It doesn't have to be unanimous, but I want to have a majority of the DBA membership saying, this is what I want. And that's important to me, because we did hear from some people, and some of them were downtown business association members, some were members of the community. And I absolutely care about our community too. But if we're talking about ways that we can better our economy in downtown, then we can do that. And again, this is using the ARPA money. I'm not meaning to exclude downtown, Old Town by any means. Old Town seems to have, made its decision, and they're okay with where they're going, and there's no issue there. But this $500,000, I see that we could carve out a decent amount and get that data. And then we can make some decisions based on concrete facts and evidence, not just what we think is going to work. So that's what I would propose. And I know I spoke a long time, but I didn't ask very many questions. So I'm going to open it up to my colleagues for comment. Mr. Belant.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I agree. There was a lot there.
I talked a lot.
The hard part that I have, and this was going to be my comment about the arch, and it is a little different than when we were in 2016. At this point, between Elm Avenue, and if you can picture yourself driving on Elm to Central Square on High Street, you have vacant building on the right. You have building with multiple vacancies on the left. You have vacant parcel on the right. Then you have the second vacant bank. It needs a lot of work. And so you're right. The sign needs to go into the place that gets you right at the entrance, but I'm not sure then that's what we need, to really better our community. I completely agree, John, to your points about, we need to make sure that it's attainable with this amount of money we need. I was able to get from a contact, we have less than $200,000 in our 20A account. So undergrounding is probably a non-starter. But I guess the piece
$178,000. Yeah.
The piece for all this for me is making sure that we have the easiest plan that's going to get the biggest bang for the buck. And so that's where going back to the streetscape seems like we could be taking parts and pieces from it versus what's the alternative now, or at least one of them, which is, doing preliminary engineering for Upper Lincoln Way. The part I'm just lost at with Upper Lincoln Way, Gateway Archway, and even the sidewalks is defining it better. And so my proposal would be not to go against your proposal, and I want to restate it because I want to make sure I understand it, which was we need to do a little bit more of a study that really allows us to know what really is going to work in bringing people in. If that's what you're saying, I agree. But the thing that I would ask for in this, for the downtown portion is, what is a reasonable amount of projects or proposed sidewalks? And again, reasonable meaning that you are and staff could come up with before we send it out to engineering, so that we have a more refined, but then also defined project for all three of these. Because Upper Lincoln Way, just in how it's read, by the way, how far up Lincoln Way? Do we end at Cleveland? Are we going all the way up to the old Chamber of Commerce building? I realize that we're not, but I think it would really be helpful. You gave an example. To me, I think that's the perfect type of thing that we should have on here that we would then approve for preliminary engineering. And that was the idea of the additional bulb out across from Cherry Avenue, right? Along Lincoln Way. Yeah, I get that whole fact that Lincoln Way and High go this way. On Lincoln Way, just past Cleveland, there's a bunch of empty spaces as the walking tour talked about. But I guess the one piece that I think we need one more step here is to define that project just a little bit further. So it's not just a kind of ambiguous Upper Lincoln Way section. It's not a gateway archway that could be anywhere. I think we need to know where that would be. And so whether that's do the study first to what DBA is proposing, which again, I think it all makes sense. I just think we're too far down the road, and I don't want to, like Alice, at all diminish the work that you put into it. But I think we concentrated so much at just asking everyone's opinion that we now need to do a continued job at defining all those opinions and now make them be something factual that is attainable. Just like Washington Square, I just don't think that doing that whole thing is going to ever be attainable. At least that one is in the streetscape. But what portion of it would be? And I realize it's the cart before the horse or the chicken before the egg, but I think you have enough knowledge and some help from our engineer to at least come up with an idea. Here are 3 areas, or we could do 2 bulb outs for outdoor dining. We could do, a few of these infrastructure projects. We could do 10 sidewalks, that we could do. You get my point.
Yeah.
Some more defined areas.
Something just to add in, the Economic Development Commission actually had a proposal from a company that does some of what April brought up, is they do data. Your cell phones are tracking you and they track everybody now. Very realistically, we could come back and literally be on the phone with them tomorrow morning to see how much, if we wanted to spend some money off to do some data collection regarding traffic and where everything's coming from, because the Economic Development Commission had a proposal from them to do some things. So the ability to at least get a number that if you said, oh, we want to start working on some of this stuff, we could spin that around pretty quickly.
I appreciate collecting the data and knowing, where are folks coming from and so forth, but I think it's almost, it's beyond just that data. It's making recommendations, the experts making the recommendations based on that data. So it's taking that a couple steps further, but I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think Councilman Berlant, we're talking, I know we want to do something with the dollars, something tangible, something physical. I appreciate that. And maybe we can, somehow, bisect the dollars or what have you, but I just wouldn't want to do anything that could potentially go against what data and evidence and experts are telling us. I think the sidewalk repair, you can never go wrong, right? And the sidewalks right now are the responsibility of the store owners or property owners. It's, but if we step in and do some sidewalk repair, you can never go wrong with that because we all benefit from that, right? So, yeah, I don't have a problem spending some money on those kinds of things because that should just be done anyway. But I just think with regards to maybe the bulb outs or the arch, I would just like to, I myself would really like to get a recommendation. And I think someone could turn around something in 90 days. I mean, we're just talking about a little small area and give us a list of recommendations. And maybe they're going to say, yeah, bulb outs right here. And then, you know what? There we go. So.
But if I can, just to drive home this last point though on this. You did a good job asking people, what are your ideas? The piece though, that I think we have to have data to back their ideas up is I've talked to a lot of people about, well, okay, well, let's talk more specifics about the arch, for example. If it was over here, would you support it? Oh, no, I would support it there. Then why'd you vote for it? Why? Just like the concept. Same thing with outdoor dining. Yeah, I want outdoor dining. Okay, do you want it on this street? Oh, no, I don't want it there. Well, then why'd you vote for it? And so I think back to the piece that we need is to take this one step further and just refine it back. So yes, maybe there was ultimate support of people asked, what was your favorite item? But they needed data that includes the cost of it. If you can only do one bulb out, that might change their opinion. If undergrounding utilities, which was some people's vote, but they knew that you could only do an alleyway, they're probably not going to have agreed that that was their top priority. And so, again, I think we're beating this to death, or at least I am.
I beat it pretty hard too.
But in conclusion,
yeah.
I don't feel like we can move forward just yet. And that's not a reflection on you or the input that people spent their time to give. because I did attend several of them in person and virtual, and a lot of people were dedicated to coming and giving us their ideas. And you're Vice Mayor, you're dead on that, you know, they may have just been ideas, not experts, but it's our job to now give them more data to help refine it. And so I just think that the next steps. However, April tonight brought up something really valid that I didn't hear at all in this. And again, whereas we're trying to maybe scope down these projects to something affordable, our way signage is horrible. You know, it wasn't until more recently, and that's not no offense to the Chamber of Commerce, classic, whatever, but we still have old signs that are still up. There are still signs though from the previous iterations of, oh, okay, I thought you were angry at the idea. And so I do think, my point is, I think that there are other winnable benefits to our economic, economic vitality that may not be the infrastructure piece that we probably can't.
And I think I agree with the signs. I mean, I think that should, I want to give Councilwoman Riddell Harris and then Councilman Spokley an opportunity to speak.
Thank you. So I think that part of this is on us. I don't think that when we put this out there to the public that we gave the criteria that this project should be judged by. And that's kind of when you ask someone to make a decision on something, it's kind of our job as the council to set up the criteria by which those people are supposed to judge a good or a bad project. And we never really did that. We just said we're open to anything. And so some people think the most important thing is to deal with traffic, and some people think signage is the most important. And when everyone has such a big scope, you can't narrow it down and everyone's judging it by different criteria and there's no real way to come up with a decision. So it might be worthwhile having us think about what that criteria really is and what we would like the public to, is it the location of the sign? Do we want to do certain areas? We haven't really talked it through because we wanted to throw it out to the public, but I think that we're now finding that the issue that the public is having is that we didn't put any arms around what this project and the criteria should be. And so I think that's causing some of this confusion. I think that part of the issue is going to be solved with changing our form-based code so we can have mixed use. So that way people are live downtown more and can be around more. We're going to be working through the marketing piece or the branding piece on having it be a destination brand, which will bring people into downtown Auburn more, because the vacant spaces, like you said, are a big issue. Do we want to bring people to a place that they don't really want to be? And then the other question I have is, I know that we are all talking about undergrounding utilities is super expensive. If we don't necessarily know if we'll ever have the money to do that, can we just move past that and say, maybe the utilities aren't underground and we fix the other parts anyway? Because there are pieces of that, phase of the project that we could do without underground. I know it's not as pretty when you don't underground the utilities, but if we know there's not really a chance of us having this magical $20 million to do that, maybe we should just do the parts we can do. And if we end up having the magical money 30 years from now, otherwise we're just sitting waiting around for pots of money that don't exist and having, not getting the parts of the project done that we can't afford to do, which could really improve the aesthetics, just still having the utilities on some power lines. So I think that's important. I think a plan might help, but I also think that just thinking about the pieces, we have an agreed upon plan. Many people like it would do a lot of improvements. Maybe there's pieces we can't afford, but maybe we just do the pieces we can and we move forward.
Councilman Spokley.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. So real quick question for you, John. The monies out the door that you mentioned in your presentation of this $500,000, does that mean it's programmed and we have a contract in place? It doesn't have to be completed. What?
By 2024, we're supposed to basically at least have committed that the money's going to go someplace.
Okay.
Yeah, and just so you know,
budgeted.
Here's the thing about the ARPA. As I'm describing it, it's in the purest sense of following the rules that they had set out. But I can tell you that the federal government has gone way beyond this. To the Treasury Department, I don't even think is tracking it. If we wanted to, we could probably just put it into our coffers, and that just extends the time. So I think there's you know, like I said, in the pure sense of the world, they wanted to suspend it by 2024. But if the council decides, hey, we want to buy time or just do whatever, we could just, there's a way for us just to keep the money.
Well, let's stick to the pure sense of the word.
Yes.
And for uses of this ARPA monies for this meeting, the concern I have is, and it's been expressed by all of my fellow council members, the idea that we're kind of shotgunning different areas, different ideas, instead of being led to a specific outcome. You know, here's what we're going to do. It's going to cost about $500,000. You know, yes, you're not going to get everybody all the time to agree with one thing, and that's what we're finding is we're getting all kinds of different ideas for different projects that scratch the itch for different people, but we're going to miss the 2024 deadline. So that's why I kind of refer back to the streetscape plan. It's a well-developed plan, as you've mentioned.
Yep.
It's got CEQA coverage. We might have to do some minor CEQA work to cover it in today's world, but it's something that we could pull pieces from that everybody at one point in time had consensus that they liked it.
Yep.
And we can move on it because you know as well as I do, projects take a long time to deliver. And if in the pure sense of the use of these ARPA funds, we have to have the money in the contract, I'm concerned we'll get there today, you know, with what I heard in this meeting. So
yeah,
I vote for holding off on this and maybe looking at components of the streetscape.
Yep.
Because I just don't have a clear sense of what it is we'd be spending $500,000. I mean, the arch thing, I don't need to go into any more details about that, but I'm fairly certain that that's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
With foundations and structural design and all of the work that has to go into it, maybe right away acquisition. I don't know where it's going, but things cost way more than we all tend to think. We talked about it a little bit at the previous item about how much is it going to cost to clear all these areas? Well, $40,000 isn't going to get very far. So anyway, I just think the plan is you did a lot of work and you did the outreach meetings and thank you for that. But I'm just not sure I'm clear on what this $500,000 would get us. I'd like to be a little more focused on where we see this money going and what improvements we hope to get.
So Councilman Spokley, I think you make a valid point with regard to the streetscape plan phase 3. I think that what I would propose is that we continue this item and that we ask staff to advise us on what components of the streetscape 3 could realistically be completed or modifications. So for example, if we can't put trees in because of the utilities, what about bushes or you know, something like that. But I also would like to see the proposal for that, you know, that strategic plan for downtown, because that again is evidence. This is ARPA money and they can utilize that information, those recommendations, and we can, you know, we can either support it or not, or what have you, or they can do it through their DBA. But I think that that would be an absolute valid use of those funds to get that data, to get some additional recommendations on how to really mold that economic, you know, the economic development for that area. So I think that, you know, we can continue the item, ask staff to talk about what components of this phase 3 works, but also ask staff to make a recommendation on a consultant that can do a condensed strategic plan for downtown.
I have a quick question. So one of the issues with doing that John brought up was the utilities, but it was also the storm drains. Did we ever get an estimate of what it would cost to fix the storm drains, or do we want to look at fixing the side of the road that wouldn't be dug up with this? Because we need to fix the storm drains at some point. Like they don't do what they're supposed to do, as far as I understand at this point, which causes problems because they're supposed to conduct water. And from what I understand, that's not necessarily always the case. So at some point we need to fix them. Do we yet know what condition they're in and how much it would take to fix them? Because that was something that was brought up at the downtown meetings, that if they need to be fixed, the downtown association wanted them to get fixed. And so do we know
I can tell you, every time we sit in our asset management meetings, we bring that up. trying to come up with alternatives. So the engineering team is woefully aware of the priority. Do we have that right now? No, but I will absolutely guarantee you that you will be receiving a document that is going to highlight in neon pink, if I have to, the importance of getting exactly what you just asked for. Is there has to be a comprehensive inspection and evaluation of that storm drain.
Because if it's not, I mean, there's many people who have said, yes, something pretty is nice, but if we need to spend our money on something to make it function, then that might take a higher priority. So I also want to throw that out there, that it would be nice for us to know that whatever we put there isn't going to need to get ripped up the next year because we have a major storm drain issue.
And it sounds like we're going to get that data. So that is important. And so we're good to go on that. Yeah, council, I would like to make a motion that we continue this item and that we ask staff to advise us on what is economically feasible under phase 3 or modification thereof. And also to bring back consultants or whatever documentation is necessary to have a strategic plan done for downtown for the purposes of bringing people into downtown.
Can I try and read that back a little bit?
Yeah, it's kind of a long.
Some items.
Before you read it back, I just want to clarify, because I heard a couple of different things that the big data idea that John brought up, that's interesting. The plan that you mentioned, Vice Mayor, was more of a focus corridor study.
Yes.
And I guess my only comment there is how does, again, with timing in mind, how does some sort of a focus corridor study interlace with the update that we're doing to the code? It just seems like time's against us here. We got to figure something out and focus on it and try to get across the finish line by 2024.
I think though the plan is going to give us recommendations and, and really we can choose to move forward with those or not. And again, there may be recommendations that DBA itself wants to fund, right? And so, I mean, I think that the data that we will get, the recommendations will be helpful regardless. And I would be very hopeful that there are some things like sign. I mean, there may be suggestions on some signage that we already have the signs at the courtyard or whatever need to be placed in this location, this location, and this location. That's going to happen super quick. So I think that a comprehensive plan is going to give us some recommendations and some options with data and evidence behind them. We do need a second really to discuss the motion. So if we could get a second, I would appreciate that. Before we continue discussing, we should really have a second on the motion. Otherwise, we don't have anything to discuss.
I want to add because
so what we need is we would need a second on the motion, then we can continue discussing it because
can we
really
make amendments when
we can, if we have a second motion, then someone can make
I'll
a
second the
motion. Okay, thank you. If you want to make a motion to amend, then you can certainly make a motion to amend the main motion. So if that's what you're wanting to do.
I just like to amend the motion so that way we have the storm drain information when it comes back, because I want to make sure that we don't end up with, we decide to spend this money and then we find out a week or two later that we have this major cost that we should probably be prioritizing. So I just want to make sure we have all the data together, both the information about, I think the plan is a great idea, but I also want to make sure that we're not overlooking this priority that may take precedence at the same time.
So can I read back maybe 5 alternatives that are encompassed in the
I
motion?
know. So I'll second your motion to amend just for the purposes of discussion.
Okay. Bring back a cost estimate on getting some of the economic data from the one firm. The second are some tangible capital maintenance items similar to what Councilmember Berlant brought up as far as sidewalks and in some of the what we think some of those might be. Alternatives on the streetscape plan. It doesn't have to be focused just on phase 3, actually that whole stretch. If the council was to make the decision of, hey, let's ignore the overhead staff, the utilities, that's a game changer. But the ability, April mentioned, well, hey, what about going to some of the diagonal parking? I can tell you that's huge. if you could go to, the plan calls for diagonal parking on one side of the street, parallel on the other, huge, giant, to do that.
You mean giant,
far as
huge as far as cost or what?
No, as far
Additional
as the
parking.
impact,
Okay.
as far as, but, so bringing back streetscape alternatives. Number 4, costs on some type of a condensed strategic plan. And number 5, I have, infrastructure analysis, specifically storm drain analysis. So economic data info, capital maintenance items, kind of low hanging fruit, some perspective alternatives from the engineering team on implementation of the existing streetscape plans, costs on what it would cost to do a condensed strategic plan, and then the infrastructure analysis, specifically storm drain.
And for the plan, it would be great to, almost have like an RFQ or something that we can have. And again, I think that we can achieve some of our other goals and still have that plan. I mean, whatever improvements that we decide to take, I think the plan is still very viable. So, okay, so we have a motion to amend that's on the table at this point in time. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, so we're going to take this in 2 steps. The first, we're going to be voting on the motion to amend, and which is my motion with Councilwoman Riddell Harris's addition to add the cost for storm drainage data.
A point of clarification, and John didn't repeat it, but you specifically said phase 3, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Phase 3 is only a small section and is not actually the road of High Street. It's the parking lot, including the kiosk. So did you intend, and I know we've been using phase 3 over and over and over, but according to our map,
so it would be whatever.
phases.
Oh,
I
okay.
assume what you intended was that anything that was part of the phasing plan.
Yes,
just-
yeah. I just attached to phase 3 because we've all been talking about phase 3.
I just
So
want to clarify, because in your motion, you say phase 3, but phase 3 looks like it is from Reamer to Center. It's not the streets, it's parking.
okay, so I don't have the map in front of me to say. So what I'm just going to say is a streetscape plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so the relevant sections of the streetscape plan pursuant to our discussion. Okay, so we're going to vote on the motion to amend. And we're going to, so Amy, if you want to please call the roll.
Councilmember Spokely,
Yes.
Berlant, Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Vice Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. All right, the motion to amend has been adopted. We're going to now vote on the main motion, which is my motion plus her addition that was just passed. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Spokely.
But I'm sorry,
So what
be
we,
clear of what we're talking about, because your motion though said phase 3, and I brought up that it's not. phase
Yes.
3, clarified, but don't we have to then amend your motion?
so we can certainly do that. If we want to make a motion, I will make a motion to amend my motion to clarify that we're talking about the relevant sections of the streetscape plan.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion or public comment? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the motion to amend.
Councilmember Spokely.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. All right, let the record show that has been adopted. We now need to vote on the main motion that has been amended twice. So Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Spokely,
Yes, again.
Berlant,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Vice Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show the motion has been adopted and that this is the item that received the most motions ever. We did do it right. I'm a Robert's Rules person. All right. Okay. So we've got through that item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda, City Manager Report.
No report.
Oh, I don't know if she's here.
It's not.
I believe the mayor, yeah, it went home. Oh, no, because she's going to participate in the closed session via Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed. All right. John, did you have a report? I'm sorry.
No report.
Okay, no report. Council committee reports? Council members? Okay, seeing none, let me go to the next page on the agenda. We'll go ahead and recess back into closed session.